Rehov Rashbam 23. Up the stone stairs, in a room, wrapped from floor to ceiling, with svarim upon svarim. On a simple chair sits a giant, immersed in another world of Torah learning, delving into Umka Shel Torah, the humble center of Olam HaTorah, Harav Hagaon Harav Chaim Kanievsky. Hour by hour, day by day, daf by daf, he toils with constant energy, with endless fervor, until completion. A Siyum Hashas, each Erev Pesach, for decades on end, to begin anew the very same day with daf bays, because there is no aleph, there is no beginning, there is no end, only a continuation of bringing the light of Torah into this world. Yet, this year, the chair sits still. The room is empty. The light has dimmed. An immeasurable loss for the entire Klal Yisrael. A pillar of Chachma, of Yiras Shamayim, of Hasmada, Nafla Ateres Reishenu. But the Svarim remain, lining the quiet walls. The learning continues. We will never stop. Shas Hadchak arranges for thousands of Lomdei Torah around the world to unite together, each committing to a daf, to learn, to toil, and in just under 2 weeks complete the learning of the entire Shas Bavli. And this year, just as years before, in the city of Bnei Brak, Erev Pesach Tavshin Pei Beis, R Shlomo Kanievsky Shlita leads the Siyum Hashas, Leilui Nishmas, his father, the Sar HaTorah, Harav Hagaon Rav Shemarihu Yosef Chaim, Bnei Yaakov Yisrael Zecher Tzadik U'Kodesh Levracha. The Shas has been completed once again, continuing the timeless Messiah of what we will always have, Limud HaTorah. Baruch Shenosan HaTorah La'amo Yisrael, Zechusa Yogin Aleinu Ad Bias Goyel Tzedek. The Shas Hadchak Learning Initiative presents a video of the Siyum to you, along with Divrei chizuk and bracha from world-renowned Torah lecturers Rabbi Mansour and Rabbi Paysach Krohn. Watch, listen, and be inspired. Wishing you a Chag Kosher V'Sameach.
אני דבי ליאור כל השאין הלוך אז בחולים מובטח לו שמנהלו מבוא שנאמר הליכו ישראלים לא ילתיק הליכו ישראל הלוכו יש אז דין הלוך תינויקס סליק לו שישו סדרי משנה אז דין הלוך שישו סדרי משנה ועד לחלון ראיתן הלוך כול השס ודאי לחלון ראיתן הלוך כול השס ודאי לחלון ראיתן שמלוך כול השס שמנו לבעל מדיע ולבעל מדוסי אז דין הלוך כול השס ועד לחלון ראיתן הלוך כול השס ודאי לחלון ליטי שמנו כל השס וליטי שמנו לבעל מודיעי ולבעל מדוסי יוסף ונפד לעילוי יעקב ולאה וסינו שתהית יוסף ונסינו בנו הזה עשי עמנו לאלו מבוא חלינו בפופר עון בפופר נגידי פתאום בחוקך למען לעילוי שלילום להפך בקודך קרום חיסוני ברוך אתה לעילוי למדיני חוקך אמן 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 סלו בועד וישם אנחנו לפניך לעילוי אלוהינו ולאה וסינו ששמת חלקנו בישו לסמד ויש ולשמת חלקנו בישו וקורניס שאנו משקיעים בהם משקיעים ואתו אלוהים תגידים לבראשה חסן שדומים ומיום וליחצי ימיהם ואני אפתח בוך ירוץ לפניך לעילוי אלוהי ושאם שעזרתנו לסיים כל השס אין תעזינו להסכים מסכת ספורם אחרים ולסיימון ימינו ושמאלו איש ובחורד אדונו איזלמו ייתן אדוני ובורך הסמים והשלוים גדיל ויסקדיש שמי רבו כל מודו ועושים תשחת ששולים בו ויעשה שולים עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמן
עד טוב
ואם מסייכו נשמע ואהובין שושה הקרן מפלוסים לך ותומוסון עד סעיף השבוע ראשון הדיבה אנחנו המשפחה מודים מאוד לכל אלה שקיבלו על עצמם ללמוד ש"ס לעילוי נשמת מרן שר התורה הריני כפרת משכבו. ידוע שאדם למעלה בשמיים כולנו אנחנו אלה שנמצאים למעלה כבר לא יכולים לעשות לעצמם שום דבר. מי שטרח בערב שבת יאכל בשבת, אבל למעלה כבר אין אפשרות לעשות מצוות ולא שום דבר. ומילא האפשרות היחידה למעלה לעלות ולהמשיך להתעלות רק על ידי כך שאנחנו פה מלמטה עושים משהו לעילוי נשמתם, או לומדים לעילוי נשמתם, או עושים מצוות לעילוי נשמתם. והנה פה זכיתם, הבאתם לו מתנה כל כך יפה, ש"ס שלם הבאתם לו מתנה למעלה. אני בשם כל המשפחה וגם בשמו רוצה להגיד תודה רבה לכל אלה שלקחו על עצמם ללמוד גמרא לעילוי נשמתו, וודאי ודאי אם הוא יוכל וימליץ טוב ועד כולם, שיהיה לכולם פסח כשר ושמח.
אמן.
כולם ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהים מלך העולם ויראי פרי הגופן.
אמן.
לחיים, לחיים, לחיים. לחיים עבור כל אלה שלמדו, שהקדוש ברוך הוא ייתן להם חיים ארוכים. הצלחה, גיזונט, פרנוס נחס.
I'm deeply grateful to the Shas Hadchak initiative organizers for inviting me to speak to all of you. We all know that we are still in the shloshim of the loss of the Sar HaTorah, the Sar HaBrocha, Rav Chaim Kanievsky Shlita. And so I want to share with you something interesting that I think affects each and every one of us. When Rav Aaron Kotler, Zechat Tzadik Levracha, was giving a hesped on his father-in-law, Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, he quoted a famous Gemara in Brachas Davavam and Beis, but then he added his own insight, which really is so pertinent to all of us. The Gemara in Brachas Davavam and Beis says, Agra de hespeda deluya. Agra, the reward for giving a hesped, is deluya, to make people cry. And Rashi says, to bring laharim koil, to raise your voice, and to make sure that others, sheyifku hashemim, that those who hear the hesped will cry. But Rabbi Aaron said an additional thing. He said the Gemara that uses the word deluye, agra de hespeda, the reward and the goal of a hesped is deluya, to draw like a pail. Deli means a pail, and you draw water from a well with a pail. And he says the main point of a hesped is to draw from the person who just passed away so that we could all learn from him. And that's what we are going to do today. We are going to learn from Rav Chaim what he was and what we can become because of who he was. Now, the Shas Hadchak organization understood very, very well that the primary aspect of life of Rav Chaim was learning Torah, learning Shas many times. Every year he learned Shas Bavli, Shas Yerushalmi, all of Medrash, all of Tanakh, all of Shulchan Aruch. And so they organized that there should be people that are going to learn Shas, Leilui Nishmas, Rav Chaim. And it's incredible. Thousands of people took part in it, and they actually finished Shas, everybody together. Shas was finished in less than 2 weeks. All Leilui Nishmas, Rav Chaim. And that's one of the things that everyone that's listening now and watching has to undertake. We have to undertake a greater emphasis on Limud Torah, because that's exactly what Rav Chaim was all about. And I want to share with you something that I think is absolutely fabulous. You know, many times I've had the zchus to lead people on a tour to Prague. Now, everybody knows that the Maral, of course, had the great shul in Prague, but many people don't realize that after the Maral was Nifter, the Klei Yakar was the Rav in that very same shul. I want to show you a fabulous Klei Yakar that we can learn from. We'll see what Rav Chaim was, and we'll see what we are. Now you take a look in the Gemara Chagiga Tes Samad Beis. The Gemara tells us there's no comparison to somebody who learns a Gemara 100 times to 101. 101 is so much better than 100. So of course the Klei Yakar asked the question, and it's in Dvarim Dalad Pasuk Tes and Yud. Why did the Gemara pick 100 and 101? Why not 90 and 91 or 50 and 51? What's up with 100 and 101? And he says something fabulous. And he says like this. This is on the pasuk that tells us you shouldn't forget anything that the Eibishter told us at Har Sinai. Now he says every time you learn something, you're bound to forget it. But if you learn it a second time, so it weakens the koyach of shikha. It weakens the koyach of forgetting something. If you learn it a second time and a third time and a fourth time, each time it weakens the koyach of shikha. Now watch this. Write it down. Now, if it's on Chol Hamoed, it's a shayla if you can write it down, but whenever you can, write it down. You'll see amazing. The word shokach, shin kof ches, is equal 328. 328 minus 101 is equal zohar, to remember, which is 227. That's what the Klei Yakar says. You know why the Gemara says 101 times? Because if you learn a Gemara 101 times, you're moving the koyach of shikha lower, lower, lower to be able to remember it. And you know something? That's what Rav Chaim was all about. And that's what we have to draw from Rav Chaim. Chazora, chazora, chazora. It's not only learning it one time, because you're going to forget it. Let's face it, we don't have a photographic memory. We can't remember everything well. But you know something? Rab David Hofstetter, one of the most wonderful people in our generation. You know, he asked Rav Chaim, is there any skula for zikaron, to remember? And Rav Chaim told him an amazing thing. He said, there's no skula. There's two things you got to do. One, you got to chazer. Over and over and over and over. And that's the thing that we have to undertake from today on. Every pasuk you learn, every halacha you learn, every gemara you learn it over and over a few times so you'll remember it. And the second thing Rav Chaim says is, you got to feel that it's important. And all of you know something that's important, you're going to remember. And of course, the Heilige Torah was so important. Shas was so important to Rav Chaim, and that's why he remembered it. But you know, the Shas Hadchak organization has done something else besides getting people to learn. It has united people with achdus and unity, everybody focusing on doing the same thing. And I want to show you something. One of the great midas of Rav Chaim was achdus, unity, Avas Yisrael. I'm going to tell you two stories that to me personify what he was all about. And you'll see how he cared for his fellow Yid. Many, many years ago, when he was much younger and he was able to walk very easily, it was the month of Tishrei, and he went into a store in Bnei Brak to buy a lulav. He went with his son-in-law, and the proprietor, the owner of the store, sees Rav Chaim coming in. He brought him a beautiful lulav. Rav Chaim looked at the lulav and said, no, not this one. He gave him a second one. Rav Chaim said, no, not this one. A third one, he said, oh, this one I'll buy. Fine. And then he walked out of the store. Of course, he paid for it, and he walked out of the store with his son-in-law. A guy comes running out of the store, and he runs over to the son-in-law of Rav Chaim, and he says, you know, the Rebbe Shalom must love Rav Chaim. To me, it takes me an hour and a half to pick out a lulav. He was in the store 15 minutes, and he picked out a lulav. So the son-in-law says, come with me. Come home with us. They come home, they come into Rav Chaim's house. They open up the door. On the table, 25 lulavim. And the guy's fainting. He says, what is this? He says, listen to this. Rav Chaim knows that people watch every single thing that he does. Imagine if he went into a store where they sell lulavim and he didn't buy one. That guy would not be able to sell another lulav. Because everybody would say, Rav Chaim went in there and he didn't buy a lulav. I'm going to buy a lulav where Rav Chaim couldn't even find one. So every store he goes into, he buys at least one. Now that he's got 25 in his house, now he spends 3 hours picking out a lulav. Now, how do you like that? That's Ben Adam L'Chavera. That's Achdus. He doesn't even know this proprietor. He doesn't even know this storekeeper. But it's a Yid, and he could lose business. And Rab Chaim knows people are watching him. That's Achdus. So the Achdus that Rab Chaim personified was not only Achdus in bringing Shas together and bringing people to learn together because he inspired people with his learning, but his Ben Adam L'Chaveiroi. I want to tell you another thing, and this is painful to listen to, but I think it's going to show us something so great. You know, his wife, Rebbetzin Batsheva Esther Kanievsky, she was a great tzaddikus. And Rav Chaim was so broken when she passed away suddenly on Shabbos. And the family couldn't do anything till Motzei Shabbos. And all his children and grandchildren came to sit with the Zayda and the father. And somebody asked Rav Chaim, could he tell, please, what was the greatest midah of the Rebbetzin? Everybody was quiet. Some people thought for sure he's going to say tznius, because she always spoke about tznius. That's not what he said. Some people thought for sure he's going to say shmir saloshin. She always spoke about people being makabel, to be makayim shmir saloshin for shidduchim. And then people thought he would say Avos Yisrael. He didn't say any of those. You know what he said? Savlonas, patience. That was her greatest midah. He said there were so many women who came to her and they cried, and she cried with them, and she davened with them. And not all of them were 100%, but it didn't make a difference. She had patience for everyone because she loved every yid. And you know something? Rabbi Chaim had the same thing. Savlonas. Hundreds of people would see him every day. And people once asked him, they said, Rebbe, the main thing that you love is learning. Why do you spend so much time with people? So many people come to you every day. And not only that, he wrote letters. He wrote tens of thousands of letters. Okay, we know many of the letters were only 1 word, 2 word, 3 word, 4 words, or whatever. But he wrote these letters. He had patience for everyone. And he once said that his father said, who knows why we live long? And Rav Chaim said, maybe I'm living long only because I help others. That's achdus, that's caring. And these two midas, Limud Torah and Chazorah, that personifies what Shas Hadchak wants all of us to do. But Shas Hadchak also wants us to be that type of person that cares about another yid. And that's what Rav Chaim was all about. The Eibusher should help that as his neshama, and he is looking down upon all of us, let us be agra de hespeda deluye. Let us draw from his life, his Torah and his midas. That'll be the greatest chus for him. And you know something? It'll be the greatest chus for all of us, because we will imitate this great tzaddik and come closer to be what he was all about.
Chag Kasher v'Sameach to all the viewers, and a special B'Siman Tov u'Mazal Tov to those that participated in this momentous and actually historical Siyum, Leilui Nishmat the Tzaddik, Tzar Torah, Gadol BeYisrael, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzaddik v'Kadosh Levracha, Zechuto Yagen Aleinu, Amen. How appropriate is the initiative that was founded by our good friends at Shas Hadchak, that they have created a system where they're able to mobilize thousands of Jews at a moment's notice and mobilize them not to just read Tehillim, which is an easy project and I'm not minimizing it, but to accept upon themselves that each member should study a page or two of Shas and then to make a unified Siyum in a small amount of time. Now, it came to my understanding that this Siyum that we're celebrating here today only took about 2 weeks' time, which is an incredible accomplishment. I cannot imagine how much nahat ruach, how much pleasure this gives the Borei Olam, that he sees Klal Yisrael comes together in order to finish the Shas. Now, this is the most appropriate, I think, memorial and tribute that we could have done for Rav Chaim Kanievsky, alav Shloma. I want to tell you why. Much has been said about the Gadol Hador, and we need the Gadol Hador to tell us exactly what it means that he's not around anymore. But that's a catch-22, because Rav Chaim's not here, so that we could ask him, what are we supposed to do without a Rav Chaim? So therefore we have to extrapolate to try to understand what would Rav Chaim say that Klal Yisrael's mission is now that we don't have him. So it's important for us to try to figure out what Rav Chaim alav shalom represented. And if you want to concise it, I guess, because how do you define a Gadol b'Yisrael in just a few midot? But if you want to get maybe to the essence, what we all saw, at least what was galui to us, what was revealed to us, he had two things: Ahavat Yisrael and clearly Ahavat Torah. Ahavat Yisrael manifested itself on the revolving door on the Rehov Rashbam, that people would come, all hours of the day, and Rav Chaim was there, and he accepted everybody, B'seber panim yafot, and with grace and charm, and he answered their questions, and he gave them blessings, and he gave everybody the time of day. Albeit his busy schedule, he found time to make others feel special and feel important. Now, these were old men that came, and there was little children that came, people that were asking the most complicated questions in halakha, and people that just came for a blessing, or just people that came for a picture. Nonetheless, the rabbi accepted everybody, and he was really a Ahed Klal Yisrael. That was considered a place where all the Jews galvanized and came to in order to get the rabbi's blessings, and they enjoyed and they appreciated it. And when you came back from Israel, that was the highlight of your trip. I got to see Rav Chaim, and it didn't matter if it was only 30 seconds, but the warmth of the rabbi would last for many, many weeks late until the next trip. It's Ahavat Yisrael. They asked him, his son asked him, Dad, how is it possible that you have such patience in order to receive all these people every single day? And he said, I don't know what you're talking. It's a Mishnah Pirkei Avot. The Mishnah says, Heveh mekabel et kol ha'adam b'simcha, that you have to receive everybody happily and with a smile. No chokhmot, it wasn't complicated, it wasn't anything tricky. It's a befirush Mishnah. Mishnah says you have to accept everybody. Didn't limit it. Didn't say the first 3 people that come and then you have a right to get nervous and throw everybody out of the house. Heveh mekabel et kol. Kol is kol. It's literally. He took a Mishnah face value, which a Mishnah that we all read, but he fulfilled it. So his Ahavat Yisrael was very, very, very clear, very, very palatable. We saw it, we felt it. And that's possibly why his word influenced all of Klal Yisrael. When Rav Chaim said something, everybody so felt close to him because they had a kesher with him. That being said, we could also point out that the rabbi's strong point obviously was the love of Torah. The rabbi learned Shas, how many thousands of times, and he had a custom to finish it and make the big Siyum on Erev Pesach. So I say that the good people that are involved in this project, you're fulfilling the rabbi's midot. You got together as a group, which is Ahavat Yisrael. Many of you that got together don't even know each other, but you formed an ahdut, a certain cohesive body, in order to do what? In order to study Torah. So here we have a perfect example of the legacy of Rav Chaim living through the members of Shas Hadchak. Here you have Ahavat Yisrael combined with Ahavat Torah, and you couldn't have done it at a better time. Erev Pesach, when the rabbi used to do that as well. And we all know that if you got lucky and you were at the Erev Pesach Siyum, he would give out special wine and you made a l'chaim with him. That's part of the Ahavat Yisrael of the rabbi. That's part of the love that he had to get other people involved. And then we give out the wine during the year. This is the wine of the Siyum. Whatever it meant to make another guy feel a little good, a little special. So the rabbi had all these, we'll call these tricks up his sleeve. So you give him a little wine, it makes the guy feel good. Okay, let him be part of the Siyum as well. And these are things that Bnei Israel, they were magnetized towards this rabbi. Not only because of his Torah. Of course, the Torah is incredible. There's no level. But we were also magnetized to the man because of his warmth, because of the ahavah that he had. So I think it's very, very appropriate what you did. I think the timing is significant as well for another reason. It's not so well known, but there's a Yalkut Re'uveni, that's a midrash. And the midrash says that when Pesach comes around, all of us come at our Sedarim, the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim, and we all start off and say, Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves. And it's a terrible admission, it's an embarrassing admission that for over 2 centuries we were slaves. Hey, Bnei Israel, Am Segulah, the chosen nation, and we have to admit that yes, we were Avadim. And the Yalkut says, why? The Yalkut Re'uveni says, because we sold our brother Yosef as a slave, and therefore it's a midah keneged midah. You made your brother be called an Eved, says Yalkut, you'll come every year and say, Avadim Hayinu, which is stunning, which is shocking, that the Midrash is telling us that one of the causes of Galut Mitzrayim actually was the acrimony and the sin'ah and the fighting that the brothers had with Yosef. It was the sin'at chinam that was the catalyst that began the whole exile down to Mitzrayim. So much so, there's a great rabbi called Rabbeinu Manoach. He says that at the time that the brothers were wrestling with Yosef to take off his ketonet pasim, that's the ketonet, the robe that Ya'akov Abinu made for his beloved son, for his ben zikunim, and they were jealous of it, and they resented it, and they ripped off the ketonet pasim. And the Rabbeinu Manoach writes that on Leil Seder, we remember that event as well. If you look at Rashi on the word ketonet pasim, he says that the ketonet is made out of like a fabric, and he calls the fabric like a kar. Kar is like a fabric, a wool, and it has pasim, it has lines, like it's striped. And says Rabbeinu Manoach, on Leil Pesach we also have kar pas. That's the karpas. He says the karpas that we take on Leil Seder is to remember the kar and the pas of Yosef that the brothers came, they tore it off him. Not only that, but what do we do with it? We dip it. Now, dipping the karpas is a sign of exile. And therefore we're reminding that just like the brothers dipped the ketonet in blood, okay, we don't dip it in blood, but we dip it in salt water, which represents the tears, because that caused so much hardship for Klal Yisrael, that mahloket. Good news is that at the end of the Seder, we dip again. This time we take the bitter herbs, the maror, and we dip it in the haroset. That represents the second dipping when we left Egypt, when we took the agudat ezob, the hyssop, and we dipped it in the blood, and we painted our doors, and then already God passed over our homes, and we left. So the two dippings that we do on Leil Seder, says the Rav, one is keneged, the dipping of exile, the dipping of fighting, the dipping of division, and the other is the dipping of unity. When Klal Yisrael left, they were united, to their families, and therefore Bnei Yisrael were made the rectification of the chet. So I say, kol hakavod lachem, right before Pesach, where the sin of Yosef is aroused from the brothers, and now Klal Yisrael comes together, 3,000 strong, and to come together what? To do the most noble of all things, to study Torah, to study Shas, and then to finish it, and to do all this in memory of the Rav. So, like the Gemara says, Ya'akov Abinu lo met, tzaddikim don't die. Rav Chaim Kanievsky lo met. He still lives by the fact that we're perpetuating his values. Ahavat Yisrael ve'ahadut Yisrael, and limud Torah. Ahavat Yisrael ve'ahavat Torah. And it couldn't have come at a better time. And I'll tell you one more thing for those that need an incentive to join this group, because I'm sure you're going to be called upon again, and they're going to activate you people to learn Torah. Maybe you did it in 2 weeks this time. Maybe next time we're going to up the ante. You'll do it in 1 week. And I predict one day you guys are going to be able to finish the entire Shas. They'll be able to do it in 3 hours. You'll activate the army of Hashem. Bing! We're starting Shas. 3 hours later, you'll make a Siyum Hashas. This will be something that's so powerful. But I'll tell you how it's going to benefit you. The beginning of the Haggadah Shel Pesach, we start off with Halachma Anya. This is the bread of poverty. I saw brought down in one of the Sefarim that Shlach Kadosh actually brings it down. Mahloket, divisiveness, is so toxic. Now we tell people all day long it's not good, the Torah is against it, it goes in one ear, right out the other. People want to fight. People have a tendency to be divisive. You could talk to your blue in the face, it doesn't resonate. But I'll tell you when it resonates. When you tell them that mahloket affects your parnasah. Now you're talking money. Now you hit their pocket. Shlach Kadosh says, mahloket ahat dohe me'ah parnasot. One mahloket pushes away 100 opportunities to make parnasah. Now you people are businessmen. We're happy if we can have one opportunity. We cannot afford to push away 100 opportunities to make parnasah. One mahloket pushes away 100 chances. Oh, why did you tell me that? Well, now that it affects my pocket, maybe now we're more incentivized to be be'ahdut. So the Haggadah starts off, Ha-lachma anya. You know why there's poverty? You know why people are struggling in parnasah? Diachalu avatana barav. We've been poverty-stricken since the time of Egypt. You know why it is? It all started because the sin of Mechirat Yosef. And when it was mahloket brings the ha-lachma anya. So what's the solution? The solution is Kol Dechfin Yeteh V'Yichul, Kol Detzrich Yeteh V'Yisach. Baruch haba. We open our doors on Leil Pesach. Laissez-faire. Baruch haba. Everybody's invited. Sound familiar? Rav Chaim fulfilled Kol Dechfin and Kol Detzrich not only on Leil Pesach. His door was open 365 days a year. Kol Detzrich and Kol Dechfin. Baruch haba. And therefore we say, in the zechut of the ahadut and the love, that'll already get rid of halach ma'anya. That'll get rid of the poverty, and that'll bring us to the berakah that we'll be able to give, and we'll be able to have shefa, we'll be able to have great sustenance. And therefore I say to our members, you finished Shas, you did it ba'ahadut, and therefore the blessing is on the way. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should continue to be part of these holy projects. And zechut harav, I have no doubt, the Rav will be a militz yosher for all of you. When you did this for the Rav, and you did it in his style, you did it quick, you did it fast, you did it without delay. He loves that, finishing Shas in a quick amount of time. That's his copyright, that's his trademark, to finish the Shas very quickly and then do it again. And you did it. And you did it in a way where you showed unity. There's no question that Rav has a lot of nahat ruach from this, and I'm sure he'll be a militz yosher for all of the members in front of the Kisei Kavod on this great holiday, to beg and pray to the Borei Olam that your family should have peace and prosperity and beracha, and shimaleh Hashem kol mish'alot bechem letova. Amen.